Hi, I'm Laura Christianson, owner of Blogging Bistro, where we help transform non-techies into savvy online marketers. Welcome to episode number 2 of Marketing Munchies, where I provide you with some snack-sized tips to help you improve your blogging, your social media marketing, and your online content writing. Well, I ran my first episode of Facebook Live about 3 weeks ago, put it up on my blog, and asked my readers to give me some critiques of it because that was my first ever experience with doing live video. Well, they did respond. They sent me emails and they posted comments here, there, and everywhere giving me some tips to improve my broadcast. And I did a couple of things in the last 3 weeks to that will hopefully result in a better broadcast this time. First of all, I purchased from Amazon an adapter for my smartphone. I have a very large Samsung Note 4, and it kept falling off these boxes that I had it propped up on. So I wanted to purchase an adapter for it so that I could hook it up to my tripod, and hopefully things will be much more stable this time around than they were with my first episode. I'm also using the Wi-Fi on my phone this time because I believe I was using 3G or 4G last time, and we lost the signal partway through the episode, which was not good. And so I've been testing it this afternoon, and I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi signal in my living room, where I'm currently sitting, is a little bit stronger than it was in my dining room where I was filming the first episode from. Well, I'd like to welcome you if you're here watching live, and please leave a comment in the comment space. I will attempt to squint and read the comments that are on my smartphone as I'm talking with you. And if you need to hear the sound, there should be a little button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen that you can click, and that will turn the sound on for the video. Well, today's episode is called "It Never Hurts to Ask," or 4 strangers, 3 airplanes, and 1 hot taxi. This Saturday, I was headed home to Seattle from a conference in Colorado Springs, where I was teaching. And I arrived at the TSA security checkpoint in the Colorado Springs airport. Lo and behold, there was no line whatsoever. So I was so amazed at this strange and unusual sight that I took a picture of the line, and I am getting here a note that my connection is weak, which is not making me very happy. So if this video is pixelating on your screen, that's why. Anyway, so I took a picture of this strange and unusual sight at the Colorado Springs airport, which I will post later at bloggingbistro.com along with a copy of this Facebook Live video. So I board this little puddle jumper commuter plane and manhandle my extremely large carry-on suitcase underneath the seat with a little bit of help from the flight attendant, and I settle in for my 3-hour flight to Seattle. And then we hear these ominous words over the PA system. "This flight is overloaded. We need 5 volunteers to get off. We'll give you $300 in credit to fly anywhere on Alaska Airlines during the coming year, and we guarantee that we'll get our volunteers to Seattle by 6 p.m. this evening." I thought about that. Our flight had already been delayed for an hour, so getting back to Seattle only 2 hours later than what I had originally intended didn't sound like a bad deal. And $300 for 2 hours of my time sounded like a no-brainer. So the woman sitting next to me, whom I had never met before, she and I looked at each other, and we simultaneously reached up to press the flight attendant call button. It almost felt like we were on Jeopardy, where they're trying to press that button really fast to be the first one to press it. So we hauled all of our stuff off the plane along with the other people who had volunteered to get off, and that was the beginning of our great adventure. As we watched our plane pull away from the gate, the supervisory agent informed us that the flight to Denver that they thought had several empty seats had suddenly filled up. The four of us who had volunteered, we were all women who were traveling on our own, looked at each other in dismay. I think it was at that moment that the four of us simultaneously realized we were going to be spending a very long time together. So Colleen, Susan, Melanie, and I had already introduced ourselves to one another, and we decided that now would be the perfect time to get to know each other. And so we sat there at the gate and chatted while two gate agents and the supervisor started researching our options. Well, they came up with Plan C. They were going to fly us to Dallas-Fort Worth on United and then to Seattle, where we would arrive late Saturday evening. So they printed out our boarding passes just as the United gate agent announced over the airport PA system, "Last call for United Flight XYZ to Dallas-Fort Worth." So we sprinted toward the gate, and fortunately the Colorado Springs Airport has only 12 gates total, so reaching the other gate was not exceptionally difficult, but the doors to the plane had already closed. So back to the Alaska gate we went, and the gate agents went to work on Plan D. It was now after 2 p.m. Our flight was supposed to arrive, our original flight was supposed to arrive in Seattle at 3. And the four of us who had volunteered to get off the plane were getting kind of hungry. So the gate agent went into their super secret cupboard and brought out a case with full-size bags of chips, not those little teeny weeny ones that are about this size that have pretzels in them that they give you in coach on the airplane, but actual regular bags of chips. So she also wrote us restaurant vouchers for $12 each. Not that we could use the restaurant vouchers because we had to stay planted at the gate in case another flight suddenly got arranged for us. So then we moved on to Plan D, which involved sending us to Salt Lake City. That was briefly discussed among the powers that be and promptly thrown out for reasons unknown to me. Plan E was to hire a taxi to drive us to Denver, and from there we would fly to Los Angeles, and from there we would have a long layover and then fly into Seattle, due to arrive in Seattle at 2:15 a.m. on Sunday. Well, here's where my life motto came into play. My life motto is, "It never hurts to ask." I politely reminded the supervisor that we had gotten off the plane because they had promised us that they would have us in Seattle by 6 p.m. And I said, 2:15 a.m. Sunday morning is technically tomorrow. That's 8 hours longer and 2 plane flights more than what we had anticipated or agreed to. Would you consider giving us additional credit to go towards another flight? And since we're going to be stuck at LAX for several hours, how about a voucher for dinner too? Well, the supervisor, whose name is Tracy Ackerman, promptly wrote the vouchers for both dinner and the additional credit toward another flight. Thank you, Tracy. You are awesome. We really appreciate you and all the work that you did on our trying to reconnect. I think we're back. There was a little glitch there, and I think we're back. So the four of us, Susan, Colleen, Melanie, and me, followed Tracy the supervisor to baggage claim, where we reclaimed our checked bags and arranged for them to be sent to Seattle. There was only one minor glitch. Melanie, who is an Army sergeant who was being transferred to Korea for a year, had checked in 4 of those ginormous military duffel bags that contained all her important earthly possessions. Now, if you've ever been to Colorado Springs, you know that it's a military town. So Melanie was not the only member of the military who happened to be on that original flight that was going from Colorado Springs to Seattle. Turns out the baggage handler took the wrong person's luggage off of the plane. Melanie's bags were still currently en route to Seattle, while the bags of a soldier who was headed to Boise were stuck in the Colorado Springs airport. Well, with assurances from Tracy, the supervisor, that they'd take care of it, the four of us piled into a minivan taxi. It was now 4 p.m. We were still in Colorado Springs, and our flight from Denver to Los Angeles was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. Now, it typically takes an hour or 2 hours to get to Denver from Colorado Springs, depending on traffic. So we told the taxi driver, step on it. Well, two of our passengers get car sick, so I volunteered to sit in the very back seat of the minivan. It was 85 degrees this Saturday, and the driver of the minivan, the taxi driver, refused to turn on the AC, claiming that the van would overheat if he turned it on. So I'm sitting in the back with sweat pouring out of every pore in my body and feeling extremely hungry because we never had gotten to eat lunch. Well, fortunately, Colleen and Susan, who were sitting directly in front of me, figured out a way to lower their windows slightly, so I got a little bit of breeze and I was able to breathe. Well, on the taxi ride to Denver, we encountered one traffic accident and stop-and-go traffic most of the way to Denver. We did make it to Denver on time for our flight. Got through security with only one complete bag check and one full body pat down, and we made it to the gate just in time to board the plane. Well, as we were boarding the plane, a tall man who was sitting in the seat directly in front of me jumped up to help me put my unwieldy carry-on bag in the upper, in the container up above and in the overhead bin. And he helped several other passengers as well. Well, then, as we continued to board, the two women in the row in front of me discovered that they'd both been assigned the same seat. This same man who had just been helping me with my luggage volunteered to move to the back of the plane. So he trudged back there, and his gorgeous wife stood up. She turned around, and she looked at him longingly with this pouty face. She's like that. And Susan, one of my traveling companions who'd been sitting next to this man, noticed his wife's pouty face. And she asked her, do you want to sit by your husband? I'll trade with him. And the wife said, would you really? Oh. And so, sure, Susan got up. She started making her way to the back of the plane, and she announced to pretty much everybody in general, this is the last nice thing I'm doing today. But it wasn't, and I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. So Susan and the tall man switched places, and the husband and wife who were sitting right in front of me were then conferring, and they're like, oh, that was so nice of her. We should buy her a drink. Do you think she'd want a drink? And I leaned forward and I said, yes, I know she'll want a drink, and dinner too, if you can afford it. So the flight attendant heard me saying this to them and said, you know what, I'll take care of it. And the airline then comped Susan a drink and some food. Well, we found out why this happened a little bit later. Apparently, those seats in the front that have extra legroom, the ones right behind first class, are the premium seats that you have to pay an extra $60 for. So the airline had assumed that Susan, who was one of the volunteers that was traveling with me, was giving up a seat that she'd paid an extra $60 for. Well, finally the flight landed in LA, and we learned that this kind man who had been stowing everyone's luggage in the overhead compartments and who had given up his $60 seat and then later gotten it back was Mike Epps, who is a stand-up comedian, a producer, an actor, and a rapper. So to me, you know what, that just goes to show you that those Hollywood types are not all bad. And Mike, we thank you so much for your kindness and your generosity to your fellow passengers. Well, we arrived at LAX at about 8:30 p.m. and had a 3-hour layover. Finally, a chance to get something to eat. So the four of us, Melanie, Susan, Colleen, and me, We had stuck together like glue since we first got off that plane in Colorado Springs many hours earlier, and we each had $24 in food vouchers. So we found the closest restaurant that would accept our vouchers, and we enjoyed a leisurely meal where we spent every penny and then some of those vouchers. Now, Susan, the one who had announced on the plane that she was not going to do anything nice for anybody the rest of the day, treated all of us to a chocolate lava cake for dessert. It was one piece of cake, 4 spoons, and we were such good friends by that time that we didn't even care about sharing our germs with one another. So on my blog at bloggingbistro.com, when I post this video there later this evening or maybe tomorrow, I will post a picture of us, of the 4 of us, that was taken at 11 p.m. at LAX. We're pretty bedraggled, but we're still hanging in there. Well, we finally made it to Seattle at 2:15 Sunday, 2:15 a.m. As we walked through the deserted terminal at SeaTac, Melanie shouted to no one in particular, "I am never, ever giving up my seat on a plane again." Well, 2 of the members of our group had no way of getting anywhere since we arrived at SeaTac in the middle of the night. Melanie, our Army sergeant, was catching a 9 a.m. flight to Korea, and Colleen, who lives on an island that's accessible only by ferry, and the ferries had gone to bed for the night. Of course, Susan, the kind woman who vowed that she wasn't going to do anything nice for anyone ever again, invited Colleen to spend the night at her house and then said she'd take her to the ferry dock the next morning. Well, Alaska Airlines came through again. They did another nice thing. They arranged for a hotel room for Colleen and Melanie so they could catch some Z's before the final leg of their respective journeys. And the 4 of us parted with hugs after exchanging phone numbers. It was a surreal day and one that I'll always remember. So in terms of marketing lessons, a couple of things I learned, because I always approach everything from the perspective of a marketer. And that is, I learned to appreciate the customer service of Tracy Ackerman and Alaska Airlines, as well as the folks at United who had partnered with Alaska to get us home. Tracy and her crew did not have it easy. They were working with incomplete information about who was on which flights and how many people were on which flights, and that information seemed to change by the minute. But they did their best to work things out for us. They fed us eventually, and they gave us a place to sleep, and they compensated us more than they had originally agreed to. So will I fly Alaska again? And will I recommend them to other people? Yes. Because even though some employee that was working out of Colorado Springs put too much jet fuel in our plane, which caused the original issue with the plane being overweight, all those people worked together to make the best of a difficult situation. We met generous people like Mike Epps, who I'm pretty sure could have afforded to sit in first class, but he voluntarily gave up his seat in coach so that an elderly woman with a disability wouldn't have to walk all the way to the back of the plane. And best of all, I made 3 new friends, Susan, Colleen, and Melanie, and we will always share the memory of that crazy day, and we'll treasure the new friendships that we made during this adventure. And for me, that made it all worth it. So how about you? Have you ever had a wacky travel adventure that changed your life for the better? When you're watching the replay of this video, I hope that you'll take the time to leave a couple of comments. I would love to hear from you and to hear about your own travel adventures. Well, I am planning to make this Marketing Munchies Facebook Live broadcast a regular part of what we do here at Bloggy Bistro. So I would love to know days and times that work best for you to watch the video live, or whether you prefer watching the replay. If you give me some times, make sure to let me know what time zone you're in. I'm recording this during I'm in the Pacific time zone. So those of you who are watching in the East Coast or other parts of the world, if you're in different time zones, let me know what works best for your particular time zone. You can watch the replay of this episode and share it with your Facebook peeps from my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/bloggingbistro. Hope you'll like my page while you're at it. Or you can watch the replay later this evening or tomorrow on my website, bloggingbistro.com. I'll be posting it there. Well, this wraps up episode number 2 of Marketing Munchies. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.